jury members.
Right now, let's open the floor to question right away. Please take your seats. We are going to start with a question. Right here, this gentleman over there. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Good evening. It's Chris Knight from National Post and Post Media in Toronto. Good evening to the jury, and thank you for some very difficult and interesting choices that it must have been. A year ago, I asked Jessica Chastain here about that jury and the representation of women in films that year. They were few in number and very strong in talent, and I'd like to put the question to you, Ms. Blanchette, and any other women, anyone on the jury, if you can talk about female representation at Cannes this year, what it meant to give some of those prizes to the female directors, and what you see or hope for in Cannes to come. Thank you.
Well, I think all of us, men and women alike on the jury, would love to see more female directorial voices represented, and I feel that there's a very strong drive within the organisation of the Cannes Film Festival to make sure that they explore with their curious hat on the female perspectives. There perhaps weren't quite as many female-driven narratives as I would have liked, but there were certainly some powerhouse female performances, and we awarded one. And, you know, there were several that we could have chosen from. But of course, I mean, it's when in the creative arts, when you have homogeneity of perspective, it's a very uncreative place. So the more diverse the perspectives, the more creative and interesting and dangerous and exciting the fair will be.
Right here in the first row.
My question is for all the jury members. I'd like to know: is it hard for you to all of you guys to reach this verdict? Was it unanimous?
No blood was shed. It was very respectful, but of course it was a very, very. Other people can speak to this. It was a very strong year, and very diverse year. A lot of very strong, interesting, diverse films. And so we had to often move beyond the place of our natural taste and try and put our objective hats on. And of course, it's a group decision. So no one person led the jury. But does someone else want to speak to that?
Oui, moi je viens parler. Oui, c'était.
Yes.
On a des goûts, on avait des goûts différents.
We had different tastes.
On vient de cultures.
We come from different cultures.
Malgré nous, influencés aussi
Maybe, despite everything,
par notre milieu, je ne sais pas, mais
we are influenced by our background. It was certainly very interesting to compare our views
de tous les jurés.
Within the jury.
Sachant que nous venons aussi de.
We do, of course.
Même si nous sommes tous, nous faisons partie de la grande famille du cinéma, mais nous avons.
Belong to the big film family.
Des professions différentes.
But we have different professions.
Extrêmement
and for my part, it was extremely interesting.
En fait, d'ouvrir ces conversations.
To hold these conversations.
Des questions que des réponses.
There were perhaps more questions than answers, in fact.
C'est comme si nous avions été invités dans le plus grand
It's as though we had been invited to the greatest restaurant in the world. Some people prefer fish, other people prefer meat, others are vegetarian. But right at the end, we had a splendid feast, and it was quite extraordinary, particularly for me. It was an incredible experience, and I would like to thank the Cannes Film Festival. I'm deeply moved, in fact, to have received this gift. I met amazing people, and I'm sure we'll see each other again, because we are all alike. Thank you.
First row here.
I'm from Japan. I have a question to Kate and other juries. So, how did you make a decision to choose Shoplifter for Palme d'Or? Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of rules in France, surprisingly. And there's the Palme d'Or it has to be something that where all the elements come together, where the acting is extraordinary, where the direction is extraordinary, where the mise en scène is profound and deep, the cinematography, where all those elements are seamlessly interwoven. And it was hard because there were several films we felt were like that, and it was a very difficult decision. But in the end, I think we were completely bowled over by how intermeshed the performances were with the directorial vision. And it was a very difficult decision, but and that's the hard thing, you know. It's, as Kaja said really early on, we're not here to judge, we're here to choose. And you know, it was quite painful, but it's an extraordinary film. Anyone, Denis? Or?
Maybe somebody wants to add something about the discussion about the choice of the Palme d'Or.
Mais ça a été un film quand même qui a
This is a film which all moved us deeply. We fell in love with it.
Il y a eu plusieurs films qui nous ont profondément
Several films made a big impression on us.
très très fortes.
There were very powerful films this year. So we held lengthy discussions.
Il y a une grâce dans ce film.
The film is very graceful
Une élégance, une
and
profondeur
elegant and deep.
Beaucoup touché.
And the screenplay therefore touched us all no end.
Amir Khamenei, Yediot Ahronot. Israel, Kate, did you wear the kimono as homage to the winner? And how much gender and political agenda influence on the winners? And how come you ignore the beautiful film of Nuri Bilal Ceylan?
I didn't quite understand the last part. I didn't realize I was wearing a kimono, but yes. I think the world is a very political place, and the media very quickly turns human issues into political issues. And as artists working in cinema, we made a pact with one another that we would look at each film as a work of art in and of itself. And sometimes, as you know, as Katja suggested, you know, we are comparing apples with oranges, but we really tried to push the political environment outside our choices and to choose things purely that touched us, that stayed with us. I mean, Terry said something very interesting at the beginning of the process. He said some films will burn very brightly and fade very quickly, and some films will take a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year to really for you to digest. And it's very hard when filmmakers have very different rhythms to compare them. So that was actually our focus rather than any political agenda. It was a very egoless jury, which was a pleasure to have the conversations in. I think the way work is absorbed and dissected and disseminated can be politicized. But I think those, in the making of the work, I don't think it's political. Although there were a couple of films that were quite overtly political, but that didn't influence our decision.
Over there.
Bonjour, Marc-André Dussier de
Marc-André, Montreal. I have a question for Denis Villeneuve. Was there a film which you defended particularly, and if so, why?
To talk about if some movies I love that I wanted to defend. Yes. Did I? I will say it in English, so my friend. Did I won some battles? Yes. Did I lost some? Maybe. I cannot talk. We cannot talk. It's like it was a group decision, and honestly, for me as a filmmaker, I felt that my duty was to defend the movie, not to judge them. And I think that we were all everybody on the jury, I felt, did the same, and it was like very sincerely profound experience to share cinema. To talk about cinema with those great artists, and it's quite unique, and it will affect me, and I think it did for a lot of us in our process as an artist in the future. Yeah, I would say.
Sir, what was that?
Hello, good evening. Mohammed from Algeria, journalist. Sorry. My question is for Kate. You just said in the red carpet right now, you said we not judge, we choose. How can we choose a good movie and we give Palme d'Or between competition, where there is some movie were made with low budget and some movie with a lot big industry. So how do we choose about this? And I have another question about Jean-Luc Godard. Is the Palme d'Or about you honoring him or about his movie? It was in the competition. What do you think about the film of Godard? It was in competition. So.
Well, maybe I'll answer the second part first. We saw the film, and we were all we could not stop talking about it. Obviously, we have a very short amount of time. There's 2 or 3 films a day, and we tried to meet once a day, and it was so it lingered with us and confused and confounded and provoked and angered us and excited us, and it actually then began to influence our perspective on the rest of the festival. And so we felt that as an artist who is continuing to experiment and be alive to the possibility of the future of cinema, we felt that this film was profoundly important, not only in and of itself, but in the context of the rest of the films that we saw. So it's not an honorary Palme d'Or, but yet, of course, it's seen in the context of his extraordinary body of work and his extraordinary influence as an artist. But, I mean, Eva, do you perhaps want to talk about what I've forgotten what the first part of the question is, so you can answer it, Eva.
Yes, I wasn't listening closely. Sorry.
So the first part of the question was, how do you choose?
Big budget, small budget?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think something we talked about very early on was to try to be alive and open to what the filmmaker was trying to achieve, whether it was made for $2.50 or whatever the budgets were, and some of them were very, very small. And I've worked on myself, and I'm sure all of us have worked on budgets big and small, but you can achieve a lot with a little. If you're economical and you've got the passion and the vision and you've assembled a team and you see that through to the end. So it wasn't it wasn't about the size of the budget, but it's an impossible task, and we had to accept that from the get-go, because it's you're lining things up of very, very different ambition and attack, and so we had to sort of analyse whether perhaps the ambition was fully realised. Partially realised, because sometimes you'll see a film which has an extraordinary sequence or an extraordinary performance or a remarkable screenplay, but the rhythm goes off a little bit. So, it doesn't mean that film doesn't have merit, but it's bloody difficult.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's about the impact of the poetry, and that has no price. It's like an image, the power of an image, and how it was made, that in a way was not our problem. That's the way I think, the only way, otherwise it would be too difficult. The movies have been made in so different conditions. So poetry has not linked with money.
But
you
also
cannot do that.
The other thing is too that we come from such different filmmaking cultures. So, say Robert's perspective is very different to mine, to Ava's, and that's a chance for you to say something.
Oui. Nous avons.
Yes, indeed. I agree entirely with what Kate has said. It was an impossible mission to accomplish. But I do think we succeeded. What's surprising, I would say, is that despite we come from different horizons, we have different professions, we have different viewpoints, despite that fact, we realized that we're very, very close in our tastes.
On dit là qu'il y a quelques différences. Moi, j'ai été plutôt étonné.
I was really quite surprised to see to what extent.
Qui reste l'école internationale du cinéma. J'avais commencé par Mao Tse-tung à la conférence de presse.
Well, I started with Mao Tse-tung, so to speak. I talked about the Fifth International. I was referring to the cinema. And I think we can talk about truth, justice, poetry, beauty, kindness. That's what I aspire to. And I have the impression that all of us who come from different worlds, different walks of life, different cultures, we all were in agreement.
It was great to have, different generations, like Kristen's perspective was extraordinary, and so it really kind of changes things up. It wasn't a homogenous sort of perspective.
A lot of passion in the room.
Fashion or passion? Looking good, Denis.
I'm gonna get killed. Passion, madame.
Mais si je peux ajouter quelque chose, c'est quand même
And I
toujours
might add
l'émotion qui
something.
importe.
It's always emotion that carries the day.
Okay, we got a question over there.
My question is for Kate. My name is Ala Shali from Kurdistan, and we had one movie from Kurdistan, Girls of the Sun. And my question is, which criteria did you select the movie? Because I took an interview with a lot of people here, and a lot of people from Kurdistan hope to win some prize here, because about 1,000 women, Yazidi women, is now by Daesh. Can you tell me something about that? Thank you.
Somebody wants to answer this question?
It's a remarkable film, a very powerful film with some extraordinary performances at its center, and a wonderful screenplay, and really brilliantly directed. And the thing that we talked about a lot was considering Bang Gang, her previous film, Eva Hassan's previous film, she had taken a very, very difficult subject matter but made it very accessible. And that was something to be applauded, but it is the painful reality that we only have a certain number of spaces, and so it's something that we talked about a lot. By not choosing something, it doesn't mean we disregard it, and I think that's really, really important to say. And it's also, I feel sometimes I didn't know the rules and regulations, but certain prizes you cannot share them. When you give the Grand Prix, or when you give the Palme d'Or, you can't then award you can't pull out any strands from those things. So it was painful, because it's a powerful, wonderful film that all of us hope that will be seen around the world. And that's the thing too, is that simply being in the selection here, and I've been that experience with a film, it's already an open door, a platform, and an imprimatur of importance of the film. And I think that cannot be forgotten.
Right over there, sir.
Hi, Silvestre Lopez Portillo from Mexico. I would like to know if you can please talk about a little more for the conversation for the screenwriter prize, because it was a tie for 2 films. Thank you very much.
Would like to take that. Professor?
Call him professor.
Мне трудно ответить именно на этот вопрос, на так поставленный вопрос. Я хочу просто дать вам, что ли, такой ответ, дать почувствовать вам это ощущение наше. У нас 21 фильм и 7 призов. Это абсолютно невозможная задача, как в прокрустово ложе вставить вот все то, что тебе нравится. Это действительно очень большая, сложная работа. Нас очень много, у нас разные мнения, и мне кажется, мы справились с этой задачей. Кто-то уступил своих фаворитов, где-то приобрел, но в целом это, вот, скажем так, это результат общего усилия. В деталях говорить что-то, наверное, было бы неправильно, да и у нас нет на это права просто комментировать наши решения. Вот, это мы подписывали такое соглашение. Ну вот такой результат. Мне кажется, мы все удовлетворены. Может быть, не все абсолютно счастливы, но все удовлетворены. И это абсолютно, это реальность. С этим тут ничего не поделаешь. Вот. Я бы так ответил на этот вопрос. Прошу прощения, что ушел от прямого вопроса, прямого ответа, но по-другому не мог бы ответить, поскольку я профессор. Как профессор отвечает? Только как-то так. Примерно так.
Pardon, mais ça m'est effectivement difficile de répondre
It's
non pas à la question,
difficult
mais à la
to
manière dont elle est
answer,
posée,
not
parce
the
que je dois vous
question,
rappeler
but given the way it was
qu'on avait
asked.
une tâche qui était quasiment
Our
insurmontable.
task
On avait 21
was
films,
almost
on avait 7
impossible. We
prix
had 21 films and 7 prizes to award. The task was virtually impossible. It's a bit like a Proust. You can't fit into the room everything you want to place inside. So it was difficult work. We were numerous. We had to make concessions even in terms of films we really liked. I think, however, the result lived up to our expectations. This was the result of a joint decision. We have signed a document, and we cannot disclose everything we said, but we're all satisfied with the result, even if we're not necessarily absolutely thrilled with the choices finally made. I'm sorry, I haven't properly answered your question, but as a professore, I couldn't really do otherwise.
Kyle Buchanan, New York Magazine. I wanted to hear what the jury responded to about the Grand Prix winner, Black Klansman.
Who wants to answer this one? At back end.
We thought it deserved it.
Oui, c'est un prix qui aujourd'hui nous paraît fondamental.
I think the prize is fundamental.
Ce film
It was fundamental to reward that film.
est en train de changer.
The world is changing.
Et je pense que
And I believe,
nous pensons que ce
we
film
believe that
est un constat éclatant de ce changement et qu'il était nécessaire de le
stunningly portrays these changes, and we felt it was absolutely necessary to give it a prize. It's also a very great film. It's a very great film which conveys a message. And so it did indeed deserve a reward.
Extraordinary coup de théâtre at the end of the film. No spoiler alert, but yes, it blew us out of the cinema.
I'll say, as an African American filmmaker, I was completely taken by the film. A person who has kind of imbibed every Spike Lee film. I've seen every single thing he's ever made. This film had an exuberance to it that was startling and stunning, and yet when I walked into the jury room, I decided to say less and really listen to my jury mates, and the conversation was a robust dialogue of questions and queries and emotion and energy from this stunning group of artists from all over the world. We come from different cultures, religious backgrounds, personal interests, gender, sexual identity, and yet, the beautiful thing about being on this jury is that we were united by a love of cinema. And so, I learned so much from, we call the professor. I learned so much from Dinley. I learned so much from all of these folks, and within that, the conversation about that film, there were questions specifically about the African American experience, and also this moment that we're in America. And as a jury, it felt not just for what it was saying, but the craft applied by a master filmmaker, that it was something that everyone got behind in different ways, and it was a thrill to see him take the stage tonight.
And something that we did talk about a lot, because obviously this is an international film festival, is when a film transcends the particularities and specificities of its own culture. And Spike has made a film that seems quintessentially about an American crisis, but yet all of us from different cultures felt connected to that crisis. So it transcended even the specificity of its American-centric story. So we felt, really elevated its importance even more.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Over there, this lady over there.
Ok, bonsoir, je suis Laurentine Assigas, journaliste pour le magazine Yanga Cameroun.
Right, in Cameroon, I'd like to put a question on the 3 African films which were selected for this edition. How did the jury find them? Rafiki, for example, which people have been talking and speaking about a lot in Africa. The jury had a large number of women. Did women have a lot of impact on the decisions made this evening?
C'est un certain regard, Rafiki. Hein. C'était pas
Rafiki was in Un Certain Regard. It wasn't in the official
Rafiki
selection
was in
here.
another section. It was at Un Certain Regard.
Yeah, we a few of us went to see Rafiki because we thought it was a very important film to see, and you know, I found it incredibly powerful and moving. I thought the performances and as well as the filmmaking were extraordinary, but it's a very dense and all-consuming task we have as jury members to see the films that we have to attend to, and it stayed with me so strongly, Rafiki in particular, that I just felt I couldn't hold any other stories apart from the stories that we had to watch. So I then didn't go any further into Uncertain Regard. I will, of course, after this festival's done, but I couldn't.
Mais je vais quand même répondre parce que c'est un film africain.
But it is an African film, and I went to see it indeed.
Kate a dit ce qu'elle pensait du film.
Kate said what she thought about the film. I think the same thing.
Ce film est interdit
The
au Kenya.
film has been banned in Kenya because it supposedly would encourage homosexuality. I don't know whether films on war encourage people to wage war, or whether films on corruption encourage people to become corrupt. What I'm trying to say is that there was a lot of publicity around the film, which is a good thing, and above all, these young people may be in danger. They may be thrown into prison. So we must all follow up on the situation once they all return home. We shouldn't come here to Cannes to say it's just a film, it's just creation, it's no more than that. Of course, I think films are far less dangerous than corruption, and I think we all have to be very careful, particularly you journalists. We have to ensure that these young women don't end up in prison. In Kenya, homosexuality can lead to a 14-year prison term.
Last question, Madame.
Hoda Ibrahim, Agence France Presse.
Agence France Presse, I'd like to know how this year you gave out 2 golden palms.
Power of our president.
There's always, I mean, in the history of the festival, one can ask for exceptions, and it's not an honorary Palme d'Or, say that something that Agnès Varda was given by the festival. This was given to Jean-Luc Godard in relation to the film that was in competition that we felt almost set apart from the other films. So we couldn't even, because of its extraordinary, the nature of the film is so extraordinary, exceptional, and almost outside time and space, we felt that we couldn't even consider it in the same way. Does that make anyone wanna...
All right.
If I could say one thing before we close, on behalf of everyone on the jury, we just want to thank you, Kate, for your leadership. You were absolutely exquisite to work with. A gentle woman, like a gentleman, a gentle woman, a fantastic leader. She directed us impeccably. We took our roles, and she took us all seriously. She invited us all into the conversation. Madam President, you're exquisite, so thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.